Okay, I've been trying to get this program done for an hour and a half. My laptop is 8 years old. It keeps crashing and freezing. If it doesn't make it this time, I'm quitting for the day. No more. But this is a very interesting program, and let me go ahead and start. This is a case from the Supreme Court. I found it on microfilm at the State Library, and yeah, I think I need to do a share screen first. Okay, there we go. Okay. Uh, this involves the Kingsley plantation. It gets more into the territorial slave laws, like from my previous videos. I found this on the State Library, Supreme Court cases, H6, roll 28, about 32 different pages. I'm going to paraphrase. And I also have this transcribed in my blog. It took me about 2 weeks to do that. So, excuse me, once I'm done with this, I'm going to be very relieved. But it's an interesting case. You may have known of the Kingsley Plantation. It's worth visiting. It's northeast of Jacksonville, Florida, on St. George Island. It's a national park today. You see the plantation house on the left and the visitor center on the right. Behind me, you cannot see in the pictures, are the coquina building remains of the slave quarters. Zephaniah Kingsley, I'm not sure when he came to Florida, maybe if as early as the British period. Definitely was here during the second Spanish period, and he was had many slaves, and one that he had brought over, she was actually said to be a princess from Senegal. He married her, had children with her, even when she is a teenager. Her name was Anna Kingsley. Here she is. And she basically ran the plantation. Zephaniah Kingsley, he was gone a lot of times up in New York or down in Haiti. And when he was gone, she ran the business. A very smart woman. Many descendants today around uh, Duval County, Florida, and in Haiti. And this picture of her is from the Museum of Florida History in Tallahassee. Right now it's closed for renovation. They're due to open it April 2024. I hope it meets that deadline because I can't wait to get back in there and see that great museum. Okay, the court cover page. Now, the pages on microfilm were not in order. They were shuffled about, so I had to figure out what their order it was. I put them in a kind of like chronological order so you can see the progression. And I'll paraphrase. You can read the full transcription on my blog. Oh, there's thunder. It's been thunder and lightninging all day. Uh, this case, Abraham Hanahan was a free man of color in Duval County and a Spanish subject. Had a framed house near Laurel Grove on the St. Johns River, livestock and furnishings, uh, and it was destroyed by the Patriots during the Patriot War. What that was that the United States had filibusters or militia groups who tried to seize St. Augustine and capture Florida and put it under the United States, seize it as United States territory. This actually was part of the War of 1812, but actually began a few months before the War of 1812 started. 1812, 1813 is the time frame right here. And according to the Adams-Onis Treaty, those who'd have damages could sue the United States for compensation for the damages. And Abraham Hanahan did that, and that's what this case is about. It says he's a man of free color, and that's very important because if you were a slave, then you could not bring a case to the circuit or Supreme Court. Uh, and the exception was if you were a free Spanish subject before it became the United States. So that's what he's saying here. So the first part is a kind of the commission signed by Robert Raymond Reed, judge of East Florida. And one thing about Robert Raymond Reed, he became Florida governor not long after this case. He was Florida governor from 1839 to 1841. Both his terms before and after were Richard Keith called Robert Raymond Reed, very strong in support of slavery and Indian removal. 3 months after his term as governor ended, he died of yellow fever at his plantation outside Tallahassee, and he's buried kind of on the side of a housing development out in the woods of north, I guess it's northwest Tallahassee now. So I'm getting my directions a little confused. Anyway, this document here is he commissions Rufus Gregory to take the testimony from Abraham Hanahan and his witnesses, John Moses Bowden and William Barden of Duval County. And this is signed 15th June, 1833. We're going to cover 9 years of history in this court case, which is not uncommon from the time. So here's a statement of the losses from Abraham Hanahan, signed by his attorney Kingsley B. Gibbs. I do not know if it's related to Zephaniah Kingsley. Would not be surprised if there is a relation. And this kind of developing the questions or the statements for the witnesses. And questions to Moses Barber and William Barden. How did they know Abraham Hanaham? And Abraham Hannaham, his name's spelled 4 different ways in this document. So, some end in an M, most of them end in an M, and that or an N, other ways. But anyway, how did they know Abraham Hannaham, and where did they reside in 1812, 1813? What kind of house did Abraham Hannaham have? The value when it was destroyed, who destroyed it? What corn and the value did he have? How many hogs and the value of them before the Patriot came into Florida in 1811 and 1812? What furniture did he have and the value? What kind of cattle did he have and the value, and who took or destroyed the cattle? What type of house Abraham Hanahan had? Was it a real good house, like a framed house with shingles? What size was it? What was the value? As opposed to being a thatched hut, I imagine. Was Abraham Hanahan a Spanish citizen and not a slave? If he was a slave, this case would be invalid. Were all the losses due to the Patriots? And did Mr. Hanahan ever receive any compensation? And so we have the cover page here, the claim 1835, claims for 1812 and 1813. You see how slow this moves through the court. And here's a statement of the loss signed by Mr. Hanaham, Abraham Hanaham. Notice that he signs at the bottom. So that's an indication is that maybe he was literate if he could sign his name and read and write, which I find is pretty cool. Now, Zephaniah Kingsley had more than one plantation. I showed a picture from the one northeast of Jacksonville. This is a plantation, Laurel Grove. This is further down the St. Johns River, south of Jacksonville, what is now Mandarin. And Abraham Hanahan lived there, lists his losses by the Patriots, is claiming this by the Treaty of Cessation, or the Adams-Onis Treaty, which we know it by, and says that he was a Spanish subject in the years 1812, 1813, when it was invaded by the Patriots and taken over. The value of his house, he says it was a framed house with shingles, worth $500. He had 2 spinning wheels he's claiming for loss, 100 bushels of corn worth $100, 22 hogs destroyed, valued at $44, 2 cows and calves valued at $32, furniture, fancy tables and chairs, $30 value for all his furniture. There's another framed house worth $150. All the values for the losses at the bottom of the page on the left, $866. And I did a calculator on Google. Today it would be worth over $30,000, which I think he's actually doing a conservative estimate here for his losses. Probably not all confident that he'll get any money for it, but anyway, on the next page, he said the claim has never been before a judge and he received no compensation and signed below. Next is the testimony or interrogatories of John Moses Bowden, 13th December 1838. So now we're in the time of the Second Seminole War has begun. And now the former Laurel Grove, the community of Mandarin has developed around here. John Moses Bowden, a witness for Abraham Hanahan, said that he is 48 years old, lives in Mandarin, Florida. He's a farmer. He has no interest in this claim. And he was also taken prisoner by the Patriots. He says that Hannaham was not a Patriot, but was compelled to work for them as a pilot on a U.S. gunboat, probably similar to the Jefferson gunboats, like the one that destroyed the fort at Prospect Bluff on the Apalachicola River. Also well known for the Battle of New Orleans and the Campaign of New Orleans in 1814, 1815, the gunboats on Lake Borgne, and then afterwards trying to defend Fort St. Phillips. Thomas Jefferson had reduced the size of the Navy, was, trying to make the Navy mostly gunboats that were about a 40-foot long sailing boat. They had a large cannon in the front, sometimes a 24-pounder or 32-pounder, and would also often have carronades on the side, 2 or 4 carronades. So these gunboats is probably those type of gunboats. But of course, Abraham Hanahan was compelled to be a pilot of one on the St. Johns River because he would definitely be familiar with the river going up and down trading for it. Mr. Bowden continues, says that Abraham Hanahan was a free man of color since he had known him and no knowledge of him as a slave. The witness knows all of this from personal knowledge. He says that the fire of the house, the Patriots had set fire to the house and carried off the livestock. And this he all knew from personal knowledge of what he witnessed. Mr. Bowden signs with an X, which shows that he's probably illiterate and cannot read or write. He's remembering everything by memory. This testimony was 26 years after the fact. So quite a long time has passed since then. Memory might not all be perfect for that. And further testimony of Mr. Bowden, going into more of the details of the claims. Pretty much the same thing as previous here. Questions to Mr. John Moses Bowden 2 days later, 15th December 1838. Mr. Bowden has known Hannaham for at least 30 years. Says that Hannaham was a trader and a farmer. Said that Mr. Hannaham was employed as a pilot on the U.S. gunboats, that he had a framed house with shingles, very comfortable, and it was destroyed or burned down by the Patriots. He said there's a great quantity of corn in the house that was destroyed at the same time. There were cows and pigs that were all destroyed or carried off by the Patriots. The furniture was all destroyed by the Patriots. The cows and calves were all destroyed or carried off by the Patriots. Said that Hannaham was allowed to hold land by Spanish authorities, and he would therefore be a Spanish subject to be able to do that. That he also had a considerable number of ducks, geese, turkeys, and fowls. Of course, Mr. Brown signs with an X. Okay, next is the second witness, William Barden. And he lived opposite on the St. Johns River, across from what's Mandarin right now. There's Dr. Lake. Mr. Barnes says that in 1812 he resided at McCulloch's Point on the St. Johns River. I'm not familiar with that area. I don't know if the name still survives today. He was detained and forced into service of the United States, where he also served as a pilot and a mail carrier for the Patriots that went between Piccolata and the camp of Colonel Smith. So he was a mail carrier for the Army and Marine forces in Florida. It says that he was 29 years old at the time. He was made prisoner by Patriots during the siege of St. Augustine. Mr. Barnes says that Abraham Hanahan was not a Patriot, but they saw him employed as a pilot on the gunboat. No doubt that he was compelled to do so and forced to do that. He was a free person of color and did not know if he was ever a slave, and knows that Mr. Hanaham's losses were from his own personal knowledge. And Mr. Barnes signed with his name, not an X. So that means he's probably also literate. Very interesting to note that this is court affidavits and court witness documents, and they're supposed to be true. If they all say that to their knowledge they don't think Mr. Hanaham was ever a slave, then maybe he was not. Kind of a side note on history is that Zephaniah Kingsley actually married the daughter of Mr. Hanaham. Had more than one wife. Back then, that's what a lot of slave owners did to build their number of slaves. So Mr. Hannaham also became the father-in-law of Kingsley, although Kingsley was probably much older. Okay, once again, more witness testimony of Mr. William Barden of Duval County, examined for Mr. Hanaham's claims. This is 12th of December, 1838. He said that Mr. Hannaham resided at Laurel Grove on the west side of the St. Johns River. There's some confusion here because some of the sources say that was the west side, some say the east. Mandarin's on the east side of the river. The west side is now Orange Park, Florida. So, a little confusion, but anyway, I don't think that's the important point very much. It says that Mr. Hanaham in 1812 had been there for 2 or 3 years previous, engaged in trading and agriculture. In 1812, he was a pilot on the American gunboats on the St. Johns River. These are United States gunboats. These are not boats from the militia or the Patriots. So the United States was going hand in hand with these filibusters or militia trying to take over Spanish Florida. Mr. Barden says that Hannaham had corn, salt, and articles for sale, but they were all burned with the house. He said that Mr. Hannaham had a large drove of hogs, and he knows because some of the locals who had sold the hogs to him, and I think he had bought one himself. He said that the Patriots, he had seen them killing, eating, and destroying these animals. He knows that Mr. Hannaham had furniture that was destroyed with the house. He said that it was a large house built of large timbers, and were quite expensive. Maybe Mr. Hanaham built the house from timber salvaged elsewhere, but was all destroyed, set fire by the Patriots. Says that Mr. Hanaham was an actual Spanish subject, which means that he was a free person of color and not a slave. There's questioning of the testimony because the witness originally said 1813, but it actually happened in 1812, and that was a point argued over in the court cases. Remember this 26 years later. Memories might not be so clear. Okay, the next page, cross interrogation of witness by Robert Raymond Reed. Cross interrogatories to ask the witnesses from Judge Reed. Basically the same questions answered by the witness on previous pages. Judge Reed, of course, later became governor, as I mentioned. And he also had a pro-slavery, pro-Indian removal stance. Next on the right is statement by Antonio Alvarez. It said that he had met Hannaham after the territory was transferred to the U.S., that he believes Hannaham was a free Spanish subject because he would not be granted Spanish land from the governor if he wasn't, and believes that Hannaham was always a free man. Of course, that's important coming from Antonio Alvarez because he was the keeper of the Spanish archives and the land grants. And I mean, he knew what was valid. So now we have another statement by Mr. John Moses Bowden, dated 5th of September, 1839. Says that he's 48 years old, native of East Florida, born under the Catholic Majesty, and has known Mr. Hannaham since 1804. So basically, they have known each other since they were teenagers, according to the age he gave information here. It says he has always known Hannaham as a free colored man, and that he was a good Spanish subject. So if he had known Mr. Hannaham, so at least back when they were teenagers, and say he wasn't a slave, and this is testimony in court, it's important information to pay attention to. Left his mark instead of signing, of course, probably illiterate. Next statement on the right, just a short one by Rebecca E. Reed. I do not know if she's related to Robert Raymond Reed. Says that she was a Spanish subject and has known Mr. Hannaham as a free colored man since 1804, and that he was a good Spanish subject. So she also testifies that Hannaham was free since 1804. And this next page, Judge Bronson, and it's supposed to be Isaac Bronson. I had some trouble on the transcription. I said J.H. Bronson. It's supposed to be I.H. Bronson because his first name's Isaac. I had to look that up afterwards, unfortunately. Fortunately, this time, about 200 years ago, the capital cursive I and J were pretty much interchangeable. And it's really difficult to tell them apart at all. Interesting, Judge Bronson, who signed this, he has a house that still exists that you can visit in Palatka. He's buried in the field right in front of the house. And right next to the house is the Putnam County Historical Society, which is a surviving officers' quarters from Fort Shannon. So it's an actual Seminole War building that has moved there. So you have two buildings from at least 1840 that survived that you can visit in Palatka. And I'll probably do another program on those. Justice Bronson commissions Mr. John Doggart or Washington M. Ives to get depositions of Mr. John Bowden again. So anyway, Uh, they're going to once again get the witness testimony. And let's see this further statement from Mr. Gibbs to Kingsley Gibbs, the attorney for Abraham Hanaham, wanting testimony from John Boughton. No date at the beginning, but it's pretty certain that this was done in 1841. So we're now 8 years after the first document. Some of these pages have a cut or a tear in them, so they're a bit obscured, but we get the gist of what is being said here. The questions start out questioning the original dates. Did he mean the property was invaded and destroyed by the Patriots in 1812 instead of 1830? And who made this error originally in the original statements? Was it the commissioner who took the statement or Mr. Bowden? Followed by asking Mr. Bowden if he knew Mr. Barden and if Mr. Barden was still dead or alive. Further questioning if the property was burned or destroyed, if the property was burned or destroyed before or after the arrival of the Patriots, if the hogs and the poultry was all destroyed by the Patriots, and how he knew this. And it's signed by Judge Bronson, March 22nd, 1841. Answer to the questions in the statements of by Mr. Bowden, and this is dated 5th of July, 1841. Mr. Bowden states that the losses occurred in October 1812, not 1813, says that the commissioner may have understood him, says that he did not know, or the states that he did know Mr. Barden and that Mr. Barden had died 2 years ago at Doctor's Lake, so probably on his land. And Doctor's Lake is, of course, opposite Mandarin, runs to the St. Johns River. The lake still has the name today, so the losses occurred when the Patriots were in the province. He said the statements he made previous were not read back to him after he gave his statements, which is a good indication that he's illiterate and could not read them. Said that there is a great number of US troops with the Patriots who were encamped at Mr. Hanaham's place, and that this destruction was done by the US troops. So Mr. Hannaham is certainly due compensation. The destruction on the property did occur in October 1812 before the Patriots left. At the time of the destruction, Mr. Bowden was on the opposite side of the river, and so he saw the smoke and had been on Mr. Hanaham's property many times when the Patriots were there. The loss occurred while the Patriots were there, and Mr. John Bowden, he gave his mark again, signed at the bottom, and signed by the Commissioner and Justice of the Peace, Washington M. Ives. And at the last page on the right, the back fold, there's a note written that $120 was paid from Mr. Hanaham to Zephaniah Kingsley on 12th of September, 1835. And they're asking, what is that for? And a question to look into it before proceeding on the case. Of course, we don't know anything about that, if it's even connected with the claim. It kind of sounds suspicious. And their fold says submitted 24 September 1839, suspended for further consideration and proof 13th July 1840. They're looking for more witnesses since Mr. Barden has died. Submitted 8th of June 1842 by Mr. Kingsley Gibbs. There's no further papers on file. It's assumed that case was unresolved, that Mr. Hannaham never received the compensation that he was suing for not long after because of the oppressive territorial slave laws. Zephaniah Kingsley and his family in Hanaham and his family moved to Haiti, so they are out of the country, and so the case was probably dropped Kingsley gave the freedom to all the members of Hanaham's family. So this is an interesting court case. And I want to make light of this because it's an interesting period of history that I've never heard anybody talk about. So, like my blog here, I like to bring things to light in history that are maybe something that can help other researchers and also, something that may have not been heard before. And certainly connects to the territorial slave law videos that I did previously. And this was all going on during the Second Seminole War. So, made it through the video. Hopefully that's it for now.